How far does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit and loss of jobs for the American worker? And how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo? As I mentioned, it's about jobs, proliferation, and human rights. And there are those who say we shouldn't link human rights and trade and proliferation and trade. I disagree. But if we just want to take up this issue on the basis of economics alone, indeed, China should not receive most favored nation status for several reasons that I'd like to go into now. I'd like to call the attention of our colleagues to this chart on the status quo that the business community is asking each and every one of us to endorse today. Right now, we have a $34 billion trade deficit with China, the 1995 figure. It will be over $40 billion for 1996. Since the Tiananmen Square massacre, this figure has increased 1,000%, from $3.5 billion then to about $34 billion now. In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%.
What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Zeus, and I'm back with another video. If this is your first time on the channel, just know I greatly appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by. Go ahead and subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. Listen, guys, today we're looking at more Liberation Day talks. So it was unveiled today that China has imposed, I should say, retaliatory tariffs on the United States. And we're looking at how this ties back into a moment that a lot of people brought up of Nancy Pelosi in 1996, right? So everybody knows her as like the world's greatest trader, like on the stock market, not the other one. But, you know, she's a longtime Democratic leader, and how she once sounded a lot like some of today's tariff talks, right? So we're going to break it all down, you know, try to lay out all the facts, look at history, and let you decide what this all means. Is this just politics as usual or something deeper? Stick around, hit that like button if you're ready to dig in, and let's get started, right? So what's happening right now, right? China has rolled out some retaliatory tariffs on on U.S. goods, right? So this isn't like a one-off type of situation, right? It's essentially a response to President Trump's recent tariff hikes, right? Based off of Liberation Day, right? And what does Trump's plan say, right? Raise tariffs on all Chinese imports to match what other countries charge us, right? So think 34% or higher in some different cases, right? I think in my last video, I showed the whole chart. Now, China obviously wasn't feeling that. They didn't respect that, right? So they hit back, and, you know, they started targeting certain American products like, you know, farm goods, technology, and manufacturing exports. You know, this whole tit for tat, it's not really new, and it basically echoes the whole 2018 to 2019 trade war that a lot of people saw when a lot of billions in goods got caught in the crossfire. Now, why does this all matter? The U.S. and China are economic giants, right? Our trade relationship shapes jobs, it shapes prices, and it shapes the global markets, right? So a lot of critics are saying that tariffs are going to hurt consumers by higher costs, and a lot of supporters, they're arguing that they, in fact, protect American workers from unfair competition. But the issue is this debate has been going on for decades, right? Which brings us to the voice from the past, Nancy Pelosi back in 96, right? You guys just saw a little bit of from the video. I'm gonna put the video in the description so you guys can watch it in entirety, right? So if we rewind to June 1996, we got Nancy Pelosi, who was back then just a congresswoman. She went on the House floor to argue against giving China most favored nation trade status, right? Which is basically a free pass for low tariff trade with the United States, right? So you guys can go ahead and watch the rest of the video. We're going to look at a little bit more. But that's crazy, right? Because you see her, she's all fired up on all these different things. You know, she's calling out a $34 billion trade deficit with China, right? Projected to hit 40 billion back then, right? So she's pointing out how the United States charged just 2% tariffs on Chinese goods, while China slapped about 35% on all of our goods, right? Is this reciprocal? That's what she's asking, right? She's essentially worried about American job losses, unfair trade practices, even human rights, right? Like China's, use of forced labor, different things like that. But back then, she wanted Congress to push the president, like Bill Clinton back then, a Democrat, to get really, really tough on China, right? And that sounds extremely familiar, right? It's almost like she's channeling arguments that we're hearing today from Liberation Day from a lot of the tariff supporters, right? But where it gets interesting, if you fast forward to 2025 today, right? This same Nancy Pelosi, now a big heavyweight in the Democrat Party, she's not really super for Chinese tariffs, or should I say Trump's tariffs on China, right? I think she posted some on Twitter. She's calling the tariffs, they're reckless, warning that they'll raise prices for consumers and, hurt American families, right? And she's not alone, because a lot of Democrats feel the same way, right? Framing tariffs as, a tax hike on everyday Americans, which in some cases it will be, you know what I mean? But she predicted this back in 96, right? That free trade with China would tank jobs, right? That's what she said, right? And she was right, because back then, the 2018 Economic Policy Institute, there was a report that found that the U.S.-China trade deficit cost 3.4 million American jobs between 2001 and 2017, especially in manufacturing. So what's changed? A lot of people are saying it's just politics, right? Back in 96, Nancy Pelosi was, taking on a lot of Republican, Democratic. She was taking them both on. You feel me? Today she's a Democrat leader, and she's completely opposing the Republican side, specifically, President Trump, because he's Republican, right? So a lot of people always point to her investments. Again, I call her the master trader, right? Pelosi's net worth has extremely soared since her time being in politics, right? And she's got a lot of ties to a lot of stocks that really lean heavy on global trade, right? So is this principle, or is she just trying to be pragmatic, right? And if we zoom out, this isn't just about Nancy Pelosi, right? It's about how ideas can shift power, or should I say shift with power, right? Back in the 90s, Democrats like Nancy Pelosi often championed protectionism, right? To shield workers, to protect workers, to have the workers' best interest at heart. Today, many lean in on globalist, warning tariffs, disrupt markets, different things like that. And a lot of the Republicans, they used to be, free trade, diehard free trade, things like that. And now they're rallying behind President Trump, his whole, America First playbook, right? That includes tariffs, right? So it's essentially like Democrats, Republicans, like they switch mentalities. It's like they switched ideologies. You know what I mean? Just like going back with the Elon Musk thing. Elon and Tesla was originally, if you had a Tesla a few years ago and you're a Democrat, that was literally a status symbol, right? But now, because of Elon's actions with, how he's just moving around, now the Tesla is like the status of like a Republican and different things like that. And you got, a lot of people who are Democrats who want to, mess up Teslas and have Tesla takedowns and different things like that. So we've literally seen a shift in how Democrats and Republicans think when it comes to politics, right? But the question is, do Democrats hate policies that they used to like, that they used to love, when the other side picks them up, right? Because Nancy Pelosi in 1996, her stance actually aligns with Trump's logic today, right? balance out the trade, protect jobs. But now it's chaos when he does it, right? Is this hypocrisy or is it just a game of politics, right? Maybe it's both, okay? Tariffs, they're not black and white. And we've seen that the market, in these last few days, the market has lost 3,700 points. That's like $6 trillion wiped from the market. That hurts. A lot of people who have retirement accounts, 401ks, different things like that. If you're retiring anytime soon, it's gonna hurt unless things turn around. But if you're like me, you still got 30, 40 plus years before you thinking about retiring. I'm less, you know what I'm saying? I'm really blocking out the noise, even though it's gonna hurt for a lot of people, you know? It's, the facts are extremely all over the place. And that's why we're here. We're here to look through everything that's going on and try to draw conclusions for ourselves. So where does this leave us? China's retaliatory tariffs are real and they're hitting American exporters hard, right? Pelosi's, warnings back in 96 about trade imbalances, they essentially came true. But her tune, the way she's looking at it has changed, right? Maybe it's strategy, maybe it's just the circumstances we're in. I'm not here to tell you who's right or who's wrong, right? I'm here to give you the facts and for you to think for yourself, right? But let me know what you think, right? Are tariffs a good tool to fight back with, or does it trap the consumers, right? Do politicians just play team sports with policy? Drop your thoughts in the comments, man. I try to read them all. If you like this deep dive, if you like this breakdown, smash that subscribe button. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. Hit the like button. Hit the bell notification so you always get notified when I drop a new video. And never, ever forget, it's you and I verse. Information, application, execution. Until next time, peace.